History is like a treasure chest packed with stories that remind us of who we are and why we do what we do. But it's not just about studying the past. It's about uncovering the strange, the unexplained, and the downright bizarre moments that make us question reality itself. Some historical events fit neatly into textbooks, while others are so weird they sound like myths or glitches in the universe. Yet, as unbelievable as they seem, these stories actually happened. Here are 15 mind-blowing events that are too bizarre to explain. Let's start off this list with Number 15. Operation Paul Bunyan. Korean axe murder incident. This is the first search result when you Google the phrase. The Cold War was already a tense period. Nuclear threats, espionage, and military standoffs. But in August 1976, one of the strangest confrontations between the US and North Korea was triggered by something completely absurd. A 98-foot poplar tree in the Korean demilitarized zone was obstructing the view between a UNC checkpoint and an observation post. On August 18th, a small U.S.-South Korean team, led by Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett, was sent to trim it. They had no idea that this simple task would turn into a bloodbath. North Korean soldiers, led by Lieutenant Pak Cheol, arrived and observed in silence, until Pak abruptly removed his watch, wrapped it in a cloth, and screamed, "Kill the bastards!" The North Koreans grabbed the axes and attacked. Boniface was beaten to death on the spot, while Barrett attempted to escape but was later found murdered. The entire incident lasted less than a minute. The response from the U.S. was swift and overwhelming. 3 days later, Operation Paul Bunyan was launched. 813 armed troops, attack helicopters, F-4 Phantom jets, and B-52 bombers took to the skies, while a team of engineers, surrounded by heavily armed security forces, casually cut down the entire tree in 42 minutes. North Korea, realizing it had gone too far, issued a rare statement of regret, something almost unheard of at the time. History is strange. Number 14. The Pig War. Well, I don't know about you, but I always wonder who's going to start World War III. Putin, Trump, Kim, or maybe some billionaire with too much money and not enough common sense? It's a terrifying thought. But what if I told you that back in 1859, a pig almost triggered an all-out war between the United States and the United Kingdom? Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, it actually happened. It all started in the San Juan Islands, a disputed territory between British-controlled Canada and the U.S. On June 15, 1859, an American settler, Lyman Cutler, shot a British-owned pig that had wandered onto his farm and was eating his potatoes. The pig's owner, Charles Griffin, demanded an outrageous $100 in compensation. That's over $3,000 today. Cutler refused, and what started as a petty farm dispute quickly escalated into an international standoff. Both nations sent troops and warships to the islands, fully prepared for battle. By August, 500 U.S. soldiers and 2,000 British Marines were stationed there, all over one pig. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm I settled the dispute in 1872. And just like that, a war over bacon was avoided. Well, it was a pretty crazy event, isn't it? Number 13. Pope Gregory IX's War on Cats. In 1233, Pope Gregory IX decided that cats, especially black ones, were agents of the devil. His decree, issued in Vox in Rama, condemned cats as symbols of Satan, leading to mass exterminations across Europe. Medieval societies, already steeped in superstition and paranoia, eagerly joined in, killing countless cats in an attempt to eradicate evil. The irony? By wiping out cats, Europe unknowingly doomed itself to the Black Death. Without cats to control the rat population, rodents carrying plague-infested fleas thrived, leading to the most devastating pandemic in human history, the bubonic plague, which killed over 25 million people. Historians debate how much impact the cat extermination had on the plague's spread. But one thing is clear: fear and ignorance can lead to catastrophic consequences. Pope Gregory's war on cats is now seen as a textbook example of how superstition can backfire in the most deadly ways possible. Number 12. The London beer flood of 1814. Well, London has seen its fair share of disasters, but none quite as bizarre or tragic as what happened on October 17, 1814. Well, it's not Jack Reaper. On that day, a giant vat at the Moo and Company brewery exploded, releasing over 320,000 gallons of beer into the streets of Tottenham Court Road. The force was so intense that it triggered a chain reaction, bursting several other vats and creating a 15-foot-high beer tsunami. The wave demolished buildings, flooded basements, and tragically claimed 8 lives, including a mother and daughter who were having tea when their home was engulfed. The area, known for its poor, overcrowded housing, was hit the hardest. Rescue efforts were hindered by the sheer volume of beer, and the tragedy was ultimately ruled an act of God, leaving the brewery off the hook. The London beer flood remains one of history's strangest disasters, a surreal moment where beer became deadly, proving that even something as harmless as a drink can become a force of destruction. Number 11. The shortest war in history. Wars typically last months, years, or even decades, but in 1896, the Anglo-Zanzibar War lasted less than an hour. When Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini, a pro-British ruler, died, his cousin, Khalid bin Bargash, seized the throne without British approval. Britain, determined to install their own choice, gave Khalid an ultimatum to surrender. He refused, barricading himself inside the palace with 2,800 fighters. At 9:02 a.m. on August 27, 1896, British warships opened fire, bombarding the palace and Khalid's forces. Within minutes, the palace was in ruins, the Sultan's defenses collapsed, and Khalid fled to the German consulate. By 9:45 a.m., the war was officially over. The British suffered just one minor injury, while Khalid's side lost 500 men. This 38-minute war is a stark reminder of Britain's unmatched naval dominance at the time and the brutal efficiency of colonial power struggles. Number 10. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919. A flood of molasses might sound like something out of a cartoon, but for Boston's North End in January 1919, it was a deadly reality. A 50-foot-tall storage tank containing 2.3 million gallons of molasses burst, sending a 35-mile-per-hour wave of thick syrup ripping through the streets. Buildings were swept off their foundations, vehicles crushed, and 21 people killed. Some drowned in the molasses, others trapped in collapsed structures. Rescue efforts were slow and nightmarish as the sticky substance made movement almost impossible. The cleanup took months, and for years afterward, locals claimed they could still smell molasses on hot days. The cause? Poor engineering and corporate negligence. The tank was rushed into production, and fluctuating temperatures caused the structure to fail. The tragedy led to new industrial safety regulations, proving that even something as harmless as molasses can turn deadly under the wrong circumstances. Number 9. The Battle of the Herrings. Wars are usually fought over land, power, or resources, but in 1429, English and French forces clashed over something much stranger: barrels of salted herring. During the 100 Years' War, the English laid siege to Orléans, and their army needed food. A supply convoy loaded with herring was sent to replenish their forces. The French and their Scottish allies, led by Charles of Bourbon, attempted to intercept the convoy near the village of Rouvray. The English, outnumbered and caught off guard, quickly built makeshift fortifications out of their herring barrels. Using longbows and cannons, they fended off the French attack, securing their supplies and keeping the siege of Orléans alive. This seemingly minor skirmish had major consequences. The failure to stop the English resupply meant Orléans remained under siege, setting the stage for the arrival of Joan of Arc, who would later change the tide of the war. The Battle of the Herrings remains one of the strangest, yet most impactful food-related battles in history. Number 8. The Hector Cloud. In Australia's Northern Territory, there's a weather phenomenon so reliable that locals have given it a name: Hector the Convector. Every afternoon, like clockwork, a huge thundercloud forms near the Tiwi Islands between September and March. Pilots and sailors once used it as a navigation marker, but scientists are still fascinated by how one specific spot in the world can create such a consistent storm. Meteorologists believe Hector is caused by sea breezes colliding with the Tiwi Islands' unique topography, triggering intense convection. But here's the mystery. Why does it happen in this one location and not elsewhere? The exact mechanisms behind its intensity, reliability, and towering presence remain a subject of study. With modern weather tracking, scientists are getting closer to understanding Hector's complex inner workings. Number 7. The Great Stink of 1858. In the summer of 1858, Londoners found themselves trapped in an invisible nightmare, the stench of raw sewage rising from the River Thames. For years, the city had dumped untreated human waste and industrial runoff directly into the river, but a heat wave turned it into a suffocating, putrid disaster. The smell was so overwhelming that people fled their homes, businesses shut down, and even Parliament considered relocating. Desperate officials soaked curtains in lime chloride to block the odor, but nothing worked. More than just a nuisance, the Great Stink was a public health crisis, with diseases like cholera and typhoid thriving in the contaminated water. The crisis forced engineer Joseph Bazalgette to design an underground sewer system that transformed London's sanitation forever. His system, completed in 1875, is still in use today. The Great Stink was disgusting, but it also sparked one of the greatest public health reforms in history, proving that sometimes the worst disasters lead to the best solutions. Number 6. The Tunguska Event. On June 30th, 1908, an explosion 1,000 times stronger than the Hiroshima bomb tore through Siberia's Tunguska region, flattening 80 million trees across 830 square miles. Witnesses hundreds of miles away saw a blinding fireball streak across the sky, followed by a shockwave that shattered windows and knocked people off their feet. Despite the devastation, there was no impact crater, leading scientists to believe a comet or meteoroid exploded mid-air, causing what is now known as an airburst. The event remained largely a mystery for decades, with the first major scientific expedition arriving in 1927. Soviet scientist Leonid Kulik studied the area, confirming that something massive had detonated above the ground. The Tunguska event remains the largest recorded explosion from a cosmic impact in history, reminding us that Earth is vulnerable to space collisions. It's a stark warning that an asteroid impact isn't science fiction. It's just a matter of time. Number 5. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony. In 1587, 115 English settlers led by John White established Roanoke Colony off the coast of modern-day North Carolina. When White returned to England for supplies, he was delayed for 3 years due to war. By the time he came back in 1590, Roanoke was deserted. The colonists had vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind? The word Croatoan carved into a fence post, and CRO etched into a tree. Some believe the settlers assimilated with local Native American tribes, while others suggest famine, disease, or even a Spanish attack. Despite centuries of research and recent DNA testing, the fate of the Roanoke colonists remains unknown. The lost colony is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history, fueling theories from secret migration to supernatural disappearances. It serves as a reminder of how fragile early settlements were and how history sometimes leaves us with more questions than answers. Number 4. The Battle of Los Angeles. On February 24th to 25th, 1942, panic gripped Los Angeles. Just months after Pearl Harbor, an unidentified flying object was spotted over the city, triggering a full-scale military response. Anti-aircraft guns fired over 1,400 rounds, searchlights scanned the skies, and air raid sirens sent civilians into chaos. Yet, when the smoke cleared, there was nothing there. No enemy planes, no bombs, and no wreckage. The U.S. Army blamed war nerves, suggesting it was a false alarm caused by a weather balloon. But conspiracy theories exploded. Was it a secret Japanese attack, a government cover-up, or even UFOs? The Battle of Los Angeles remains one of World War II's strangest incidents, highlighting the sheer fear and paranoia of the era. Number 3. The Dancing Plague. The medieval period was a grim era marked by widespread poverty and suffering, conditions that may have contributed to one of history's strangest phenomena, the Dancing Plague. This bizarre mania swept through Europe between the 14th and 17th centuries, compelling people to dance uncontrollably in the streets until they collapsed from exhaustion or injury. Well-meaning musicians often joined in, believing their music might soothe the afflicted, though no one truly understood how to treat the condition. Even to this day, the cause remains a total mystery. Number 2. The Salem Witch Trials. In 1692, fear and paranoia swept through Salem, Massachusetts, leading to one of America's most infamous witch hunts. It began when a group of young girls claimed they were being tormented by witches, accusing several townspeople of practicing dark magic. The trials were a chaotic mess. Evidence was flimsy, accusations spread like wildfire, and hysteria took over. More than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, 20 were executed, and many others died in prison. One man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. The real causes? Historians point to social tensions, personal vendettas, religious extremism, and even ergot poisoning, a hallucinogenic mold in rye, as possible explanations. The Salem witch trials are now seen as a cautionary tale about mass hysteria, fear, and the dangers of scapegoating. Number 1. The Kentucky Meat Shower. On March 3, 1876, something downright disgusting happened in Bath County, Kentucky. Chunks of raw, gristly meat started falling from the sky. Locals were horrified, confused, and strangely curious. Some believed it was a divine sign, while others tasted the meat, yes, really, to figure out what it was. Samples were sent to scientists, who concluded it was likely lung tissue from an animal. The best theory? A group of vultures had gorged on a meal, gotten spooked mid-flight, and simultaneously vomited their half-digested feast onto the unsuspecting townspeople below. While this explanation makes sense, there's one issue. Why was the meat spread so widely, and why did it fall in large chunks? Even today, the Kentucky meat shower remains one of the strangest, most stomach-churning natural events in history. What do you say? Well, let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.